Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hello everyone and welcome to your English class. In our lesson today, we will continue with the fourth unit, which is titled The Art of Advertising. Our lesson today is the writing lesson in your books, page 56 and 57. All you need for the lesson today is your books, page 56 and 57 for the writing lesson, a sheet of paper and a pen to take down your notes. So let's get started. You had a homework from the reading lesson, which was on page 54 and 55. It was about, think about an invention that that have developed over years. When was it invented and how did it develop? So choose a product, an invention. It could be the car, it could be the credit card itself. Then, from the beginning until today's development, what happened through the years? Trace it back. For me, I have chosen to speak about the bicycle. Here, in 1790, what happened? In 1790, bicycles were invented in France. 1817, a steerable front wheel was developed by Baron Karl von der Rias in Germany. 1839, the first pedals were introduced by Kirkpatrick Macmillan. So, from the first invention, it was first invented until later in years, development. Okay, so by the end of today's lesson, you will be able to take notes on a written text. Then you will be able to write about the history of a product, describing a product. Let's get started with here. The idea of describing a product. If you want to describe a product, the first thing you will think about is your audience. Who are your audience? The data, information, the order of the events or the sentences, and also make sure about your tone. Let's try to match them with chronological order. Also, we're having something that is objective, interesting, and your readers. So, who are your audience? They are actually your readers. Always make sure that you know who is going to read your essay. Is he or she going to be your teacher? Are they older or younger people? So the information should be interesting for them, and the most important, to be correct. How about your data? The information, when you are trying to come up with an essay, you need information to write about. This information should be interesting, and that's why you have to consider your audience. What are the things that will interest them, will catch them the most? Order. How are you going to organize your essay? Are you going to start from now, then? So it should be in the chronological order, following along the timeline from the past until today. Then the tone. You should be objective. What do we mean by the idea of being objective? Never add your own point of view. It is objective. It means you will come up with the information and you will add it. Never speak about your own ideas or about your own point of view. Something objective, informative. Okay, let's try to trace back in here. We will try to trace back the idea of the cell phone. If you still remember it from page 56, I want you to listen to the text, and while you are listening, here you are going to trace back the history, starting from 1843 until 1988. Let's listen and you will tell.
The invention of the cell phone. The history of the cell phone goes back to Michael Faraday, who researched into whether space could conduct electricity. In 1843. His work had a substantial effect on the development of cellular phones. Dr. Maclone Loomis, a dentist, was the first person to communicate through the wireless atmosphere in 1865. He developed a method of transmitting and receiving messages through the atmosphere. Dr. Martin Cooper is considered to be the inventor of the first portable cellular phone. He was the first person to use a cellular phone in 1973. Cell phones went public in 1977 with trial testing in Chicago and eventually other cities in the U.S. As the cell phone became more popular, it drew the interest of large companies and was introduced in more places around the world. The Cellular Technology Industry Association, CTIA, developed in 1988, set goals and standards for cellular phone providers. In spite of consumer demand, it took cellular phone service nearly 40 years to become commercially accessible. It has now become one of the largest industries internationally with billions of users.
Okay, so let's try to trace back since the oldest, let's say from the oldest until the newest. So in 1843, what happened? Michael Faraday research on electricity in space, just the research. 1865, Dr. Mahlum Loomis, the first communication through wireless atmosphere. Now it came true. 1973, Dr. Martin Cooper, first portable cellular phone. Now we're having the device. 1977, cell phones went public in USA. Everyone used cell phone in the United States. 1988, here CTIA set goals and standards for cellular phone providers. So at the beginning we started with the research. Until today we got the rules, standards, and we're having the goals. Okay, we have traced back the history of the cell phone. Now let's try to speak about when we are describing a product. One of the important things are those people involved. Who are they? The people involved or the organizations. We're having Michael Faraday, Dr. Mahlum Loomis, Dr. Martin Cooper, and the Cellular Technology Industry Association, CTIA. So these are the important people, let's say people involved within the history of the cell phone. If we want to choose the most important stages, we're going to choose those people, in which year, who did what. It's not going to be a sentence just like this one. 1942, Michael Faraday research on electricity in space. Then 1965, Dr. Mahlum Loomis, the first communication through wireless atmosphere. Then 1973, Dr. Martin Cooper, first portable cellular phone. 1977, cell phones went public in USA. Then 1988, CTIA set goals and standards for cellular phone providers. You notice here, each one of these sentences is not a complete sentence. This is the idea of taking notes. You are taking the information, the most important, just like the idea of stress, just the important information. You're not going to take the whole sentence. Dr. Loomis did this and that. No, tense is not important, just the information. So we have here, notice the date, the name, and the action, not in a sentence form. Okay, now on page 57, here exercise C, choose a product and find out as much as you can about it. Put the information on a timeline. Use the information to write about the product's history. Now you know how to write about the history of a product or to write about a product. Now it is the time that you will choose your product. It could be the credit card, the cell phone. It could be maybe the car or the bicycle. Whatever the product or let's say the invention, just choose it, trace back. For me, I have chosen here to speak about the invention of the bicycle because we are familiar with the idea of the bicycle. How am I going to trace back or to write about the history or let's say the invention of the bicycle? In any writing, whether it is describing someone or describing a product, we are following these steps. The first one is planning. And when you are planning, you will make your mind, what am I going to write? I will write about bicycles. Is it about the history or a description of the product? Plan. Now I know that I am going to write about the history of a bicycle. Then I will start drafting. What is drafting? Put your ideas on paper. Just like when I told you how to write notes. Date, time, and we're having someone and action. Then start with editing. Now I have put my ideas on paper. However, not all of them are going to be used. Some of them are going to be taken out and some are going to be added. Then we will go to the idea of revising. Start writing your own ideas in complete sentences and revise them. Make sure that you are following the rules of grammar, spelling, and these things. And by the very end, now you are ready for publishing or giving it to your teacher or publishing it. Now it is ready. So we started with idea, then with a product until we got the product. Okay, here we are going to speak about the idea of the history of the bicycle. Let's try to trace back the history of the bicycle. What happened in 1970? In 1970, bicycles were invented in France. Then, 1817, a steerable front wheel was developed by Baron Karl von der Ries in Germany. Then, 1839, the first pedals were introduced by Kirkpatrick Macmillan. You noticed we're having the date, someone, and action. I am only collecting information. I'm not writing my own sentences yet. Okay? In here, what I'm going to do, I will put them in the correct order. 1790, bicycles were invented in France. It will be followed by 1817. A steerable front wheel was developed by Baron Karl von der Ries in Germany. And followed by 1839, when the first pedals were introduced by Kirkpatrick Macmillan. Now I have revised, I made my mind, and I have decided to put them in this order. I will speak about this, that, then later with that one. The name and everything is ready for me. Now I will start writing my own sentences. Now you have to follow the grammar rules, the spelling, and put your ideas in order. So what have I done in here? 1790, bicycles were invented in France. That's not a complete sentence. I want it to be in a complete sentence, and I will add extra information. Why? Because I want my paragraph or my writing to be interesting. So, bicycles were invented in France in the 1970s. The first bikes were made of wood, had a front wheel that didn't move from left to right, and didn't have pedals. Have you noticed in here? What have I done? I have came up with all information plus interesting ones. And also, I started with capital letter and ended up in a full stop. Started with a capital letter, and this whole sentence in here is additional interesting information. Description. How does it look like? 1970s. Do they look just like our bikes? Not really. Then I have the second one, 1817. A steerable front wheel was developed by Baron Karl von der Ries in Germany. So what have I said? In 1817, a steerable front wheel was developed by Baron Karl von der Ries in Germany. Let's try to notice the order. I have added the date, comma, then notice the names are in capital, Baron, Karl, then we're having also Germany, and it ended with a full stop. Do I have to add any extra information? If you have something and you believe that it is interesting, just go ahead and add it. One more. Then, 1839, the first pedals were introduced by Kirkpatrick Macmillan. How did I write it in here? In 1839, the first pedals were introduced. Notice here, this one should be in capital. In 1839, The first pedals were introduced by Kirkpatrick Macmillan, a blacksmith from Scotland. Notice this information. Who is Kirkpatrick? He is a blacksmith from Scotland. The first bikes had large front wheels because it was believed that the bigger the front wheel, the faster the bike. Notice here, what do we have? A full stop, capital letter. Then we're having this interesting information which will tell that the bikes from the past are totally different than our bikes. So we are giving a picture in here. Let's follow the writing rules. Now I am not done yet. I have made my sentences and organized them. Now it is the time in which you are going to write your own paragraph. What are the writing rules? If you want to start writing, you have to consider your ideas. I'm speaking about the history of the bicycle. Never mention anything about the car, or never mention anything about a different topic. Be focused and speak about your idea, which is the bicycle. I want to speak about the bicycle, and I'm going to put it in chronological order. I will start with the oldest until the newest. Make sure that your ideas are organized. Followed by the idea of paragraphs. If you will write your ideas in only one paragraph, so you're going to come in chronological order, different paragraphs. Each one paragraph will have a different idea. Also, grammar. Make sure that you are using the correct tense. How about the history of the bike or the bicycle? We will use the past tense. Was, ed. Okay. What else? Spelling. Make sure that you are writing the correct spelling. If you are writing someone's name, make sure that you are using their correct spelling. Also, we're having capitalization. Here it is important. After the full stop, you can check unit 1. After full stop, at the beginning of the sentence, if it is someone's name, a country's name. And also, we're having punctuations. As we have mentioned in a minute, the use of comma, full stop, and we're having question marks. These are important. Okay, now let's start with the paragraph itself. The first idea, bicycles were invented in France in the 1790s. The first bikes were made of wood, had a front wheel that didn't move from left to right, and didn't have pedals. Notice the whole thing is about one idea, which is the bicycle, in one paragraph, capitalization, and also France is in capital, and I have used a full stop. Notice the capital letter, and I used where because I'm speaking about the history, comma, additional information, apostrophe for short form, and also by the very end I am having here a full stop. Okay, now afterwards you will start with the following idea. The following idea is not going to be in a completely new paragraph, no. Next to it, you will start in here, full stop, and start with the capital letter, just by it. If it is the end of the line, you can start with a new line. However, here you will start in 1817, a steerable front wheel was developed by Baron Karl von Derias in Germany. So we started with the date, comma. Notice it's not enough in here, so I will start with a new line, developed by Baron capital B, capital K, capital D, and G. By the very end, you will add your full stop. Capitalization, we have used in here also the past tense. Here was is in the past tense, and developed as well is in the past tense. How about the following idea? I still have one more. What do we say? In 1839, the first pedals were introduced by Kirkpatrick Macmillan, a blacksmith from Scotland. The first bikes had large front wheels because it was believed that the bigger the front wheel, the faster the bike. Let's try to study them. Capital I, then here after the number we will have this one, which is the comma, The first petals were past tense, introduced, then capital Kirkpatrick, Macmillan. Then this one is an additional information, which is a blacksmith from Scotland. So I have added a comma. Then after the end of the sentence, we have the full stop. Start with a capital letter. Then by the very end, we will have this one, which is the full stop. Okay? So you have noticed the whole thing in one paragraph. Start in a chronological order. We have started 1790s, then 1817, and ended up with 1839. And you can put it in paragraphs if you have much more information. Okay, now how am I going to write a description of a product? Once you are starting writing your own paragraph, you will refer to page 127 for this checklist. What is it? I can do something, whether great, good, okay, or needs work. This is actually a self-assessment checklist or a table. You will ask yourself, after reading the whole thing, your paragraph, how am I doing? Am I doing great? I don't need anything. Or I'm doing good, so you need to practice more or correct. I am okay, or my writing needs work, and always ask your teachers for assessment. So how are the things? The first thing, can you take notes and use them to write? Which is on the timeline. We're speaking here not about the idea of writing itself, no, putting down ideas. The date, the name, collecting information. Also, use capitals correctly. Always when you are speaking about the history of anything, names are going to be essential and important, because who invented, who developed, who did this and that. Make sure that you are using the correct capitalization. And you can refer to Unit 1, the writing lesson for capitalization rules. Interest my audience or readers. Make sure that you know who your readers are, or the audience, those people who will listen or read to your text, and make sure that you will add extra information which is going to be interesting for them. Just like when we said that Macmillan is a blacksmith, interesting information, it will add an interest to the text. Also, write about or refer to key features or characteristics of the product. Just like when we were speaking about the product or the bicycle, then we mentioned like how it looked like, its appearance. Always make sure that you are referring to the product, not only the history. Add information. It will be interesting, and it will give them a vivid image. Also, organize and order events well. How are we organizing our ideas in here? When you are describing chronological order from the past until the present. We're speaking from the oldest until the newest. So make sure that you organize and order the events well. Start from the oldest until the newest. How about use information selectively? What do we mean by selectively? You will only choose the most important things. If you are adding too much information, it's going to be boring. Your paragraph or writing is going to be very boring. Don't put too much and don't put too little. So make sure that you are selective. Choose wisely. How about edit and correct my mistakes? How can you correct your mistakes? This is which is the writing process. We're having the editing. After writing the whole thing in a correct order, correct spelling, now it is the time in which you will check the spelling, you will check the grammar, edit it before your teacher does. Then we're having present a product in an interesting way. This is one of the things that we have mentioned, the idea of being interesting, so your readers won't feel bored. And it's always a good idea to start with a good introduction. Maybe you will speak about a story or something that will be an interest for your readers. One last thing in here, use appropriate language or style. What is the appropriate language? Are you going to speak about personal experience? It's always a good idea to be objective. What is objective? Never add your own opinion, because this is informatic paragraph giving information. Never add. Don't be subjective, be objective, and try to use formal, not informal language, because this is not a letter to a friend, it is actually a formal description. Okay? For your homework, I want you to refer to your workbooks, page 116 in your workbooks, exercise K. You're doing the same thing. You will choose a product. I have chosen the bicycle. You can choose the credit card if you want to. A credit card. Then you will speak about the history, a description, and the history of this product. And you can refer to page 127 for a checklist to check your the quality of your writing. Okay? I guess that is it for the lesson today, and thank you so much for your time.